Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is June 4th, 2019. Time is 9 o'clock. Madam Clerk, are there any additions to the agenda?
No additions, Chairman.
All right. We will be going into closed session. County Counsel, will you please read into the record the closed session items?
Yes, Chairman and members of the board, there are 5 items for today's closed session. 2 of them are conference with your real property negotiators, Eric Fleming, your county administrative officer. One of the real properties under Government Code Section 54956.8 is assessor parcels numbers is listed on the agenda, and it's 47053 Road 201 in O'Neill's. Under negotiations is price, terms, and conditions of sale. The other real property discussion is the Berenda Slough, and that the negotiating party is City of Chowchilla and Chowchilla Water District. Under negotiations is price, terms, and conditions of sale. Under Government Code Section 54957, there is a discussion under Public Employee Appointment and Employment. The title of the position is the Public Health Officer. On the agenda also is anticipated litigation. There's significant exposure to litigation. There's a request for tender of defense and indemnity in a Barajas, versus Cagley Environmental, doing business as Red Rock Environmental, and the Superior Court case number is on the agenda. And the last item is labor negotiations. Discussions with Adrian Caleb and Ken Caves. Employee organization is all units under Government Code Section 54957.6. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the closed session items? Seeing none, call closed to public comment, and we will adjourn into closed session. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get started right now. County Counsel, is there any reportable actions out of closed session?
Chairman, there are no reportable actions from today's closed session. However, there are a few more items for the board to consider. Great.
All right. Is there anyone that we'd like to open and close the meeting in memory of today? All right.
I'd like to mention someone rather unusual, but some good friends of ours and part of District 2 live over in the country club. They, Brandon and Mary Jo Hopkins, she was 8.5 months pregnant and gave birth to her child, and passed away immediately. And that was on Saturday. So I'd like for us to remember them and the child in our thoughts. Thank you.
All right, and Supervisor Poitras, if you'll please lead us in the invocation, and Mary Ann C., if you'd lead us in the flag salute after.
Very good. Let us pray. Father, we're thankful for the many blessings you've given us as a county, as a state, as a nation. We thank you for your provisions, just too numerous and things that we just take for granted every single day. We just thank you so much for them. We pray for our meeting today. We just ask for clarity of decision making. We just pray for our county employees, guide them in their steps today, the rest of the week. Give them special strength. We pray for our nation, and we just pray for a sense of unity, that we would gather together, and we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item 5, our consent calendar. Are there any items, any Supervisor Wheeler?
I decided I'd do one this time. I haven't done it for a while. Items U, V, W, and X. That's U. U, V, W, and
yeah.
X. All I want to know is that, are all 4 of those, is that their own money? And have they got enough money in their things to run their districts? Oh, here she comes. I knew Andrew had to answer. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrea Soldati, Deputy Director with Public Works, and the answer is yes. It is all of their own money. It's just a move of budgeted amounts into other budgets, so that way they are able to fully expend.
So did any of them vote no on a 218? It's 10A, 16, 19, and 37.
No, sir.
Good, thank you. And then item number Y, while you're up there, do they know that this is coming through today? Have you had a meeting with them and all that? On drilling that new well on District 24?
I think Ahmad can answer that question.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, Supervisor. Ahmad Al-Kayat, Public Works Director. This is item Y?
Yes.
Is okay. Okay, so that's for the Tiford Meadows. Yeah, it's. I'm not sure about the. This is a 2-year on the making funding agreement that we got, and we finally secured through public bidding the test well to be drilled.
It's a test well?
This one.
I didn't see it in there saying test well.
Yeah, it's test well.
It is a test well, Supervisor.
Oh, okay.
So this is part of the preliminary engineering or the funding agreement that we have to find a solution for the water problem.
Yeah, 150,000.
So this is all
for a test
preliminary.
well?
This is a testing
Man.
agreement.
Yeah, that's what that's what, but it's fractured rock. Are you gonna,
Correct.
I was wondering if you were gonna go out and witch this one.
That was
Oh, I
discussed.
could.
Offer still stands.
I should, I'll tell you. Okay,
Yeah,
boss.
All right.
If it's 150,000 for a test well, you better make sure you
I'll
find
get
it the
15
first
bucks
time.
for witching it, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other supervisor? See none. Any public comment on the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
I'll close
Second.
the public comment. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk? Tom?
Well, somebody else did down
Oh,
there.
Dave?
I didn't,
I made the first.
I tried to push it, so somebody else must have already pushed it.
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
And sorry, I jumped past item 4, not intentionally, just my fault, my error. Public comment.
Public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record.
Can you not break our microphone, Dexter?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Dexter Marr, Environmental Health. I just want to announce today is Food Truck Tuesday. So for the month of June, July, and August, we will have a food truck here at the Government Center by the loading dock. So we'll have it twice a month, starting today is our first one. Today we have El Tubu Taqueria, so taco truck. And then on June 18th, we'll have a Japanese Matsumoto
And
Samurai
they're really
Kitchen.
good.
So, so we'll have taco truck here twice a month, and it'll be located at the loading dock here from 11:30 to 1:30, and the public is invited, of course, as long as the city and county. We do have a slogan. It's called "Bringing Madera County City Employees Together, One Meal at a Time." We invited the city offices next door,
Good idea.
probations, and of course the government center. And I just want to thank administration for allowing us to have the food truck here hosted. Thank you.
The beginning of that took me back to high school. It sounded like the morning announcements, like what we're eating today in the cafeteria was great.
That means you get some free lunch today.
Thank you. And that's a great idea to take that from just, having the food here to trying to, just strengthen those ties across 4th Street. So I like that extra
Great
step.
idea.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Food always helps bring people together.
Very clever.
Any other public comment, Rhonda?
Yes,
I think
Mr.
we had a
Chairman.
letter.
I got one.
Rhonda?
Oh, you got one? Oh. Oh, good.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. On May 23rd, we received a resolution from the Board of Supervisors of the County of Butte, a resolution recognizing and commending mutual aid provided by Madera County during the Camp Fire disaster response and recovery efforts. Whereas the Camp Fire of November 2018 is the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history. The fire covered approximately 153,000 acres, burned nearly 19,000 homes, businesses, and other structures in the town of Paradise and the unincorporated communities of Paradise Pines, Magalia, Concow, Yankee Hill, Pulga, Butte Creek Canyon, Butte Valley, and surrounding areas, and displaced nearly 52,000 Butte County residents. And whereas mutual aid personnel from various agencies throughout the state and from across the nation provided immediate action and support by engaging with Butte County's Office of Emergency Management, and many of which continue to provide post-disaster assistance to support to the county for recovery efforts. And whereas the Butte County Board of Supervisors recognized the brave and tireless efforts of individuals who contributed skills, knowledge, time, and energy to the County of Butte, among whom were first responders from numerous agencies and jurisdictions from across the nation who worked to ensure the safety of the residents of the County of Butte, mutual aid personnel from surrounding counties and communities who worked long shifts to provide staffing in the emergency operations centers, including tended to the animals rescued from the Camp Fire. Now therefore be it resolved that the Butte County Board of Supervisors hereby recognize and commends the services provided by Madera County during the Camp Fire, and for those efforts that continue to be extended to the County of Butte during the Camp Fire recovery efforts.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank them very much.
Oh, that was cool of them to send that.
It was. Doug Teeter, supervisor of Butte County, lost everything in that fire. His family's history goes back 150 years in that community. Grandfathers, grandmothers, their places they built, lost it all.
Sad.
Incredible.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wheeler?
On almost the same kind of thing, the PG&E's wildfire safety open house, talking about how they're going to shut down electricity if there's any kind of a danger. I was at the governor's summit yesterday in Sacramento. It was one of the big topics, because especially even like the city of San Francisco, they can shut it all down, and they got hospitals and businesses, and I've already got a few calls from businesses up there. if they shut down their electricity, they don't have generators, what are they gonna do about frozen meats and stuff? Because they could be off up to 6 to 8 days, they said. So they're having a public hearing on it, June the 17th, from 6 to 8 at the Mariposa Fairgrounds of all places, but it's just very important if anybody wants to hear about it. And then I'm putting on a fire safety in the foothills. We've done it before on June the 15th, and they're actually going to be there too to talk about it. That's on a Saturday at Oakhurst Elementary School from 9:30 to 1:30. The sheriff will be there, and CAL FIRE, our employees, insurance companies, because we lost insurance, people lost their insurance. And then on June 29th, living in the foothills east of Madera County, Jeannie Hobbins, Deputy Director of Water and Natural Resources, Madera County, is putting this on at the Oakhurst Library Community. We've done those before, and we're trying to educate the new people that's moved up there in these fire-prone areas to show them how to live there and try to hardcore their homes so they don't burn when fires come through. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, if there's no further public comment, I'll call close to the public comment portion. We're not yet to 10:30, so we'll have to move past 6A. We'll take 7A.
7A, Board of Supervisors Department, District Number 2. Recognition and presentation of certificates recognizing and congratulating the Chowchilla Union High School Tribe Baseball Team for winning the 2019 CIF Central Section Division IV Championship title.
Really proud to be able to make this introduction today, having had 3 sons who went through Chowchilla High, and all of them Valley champions, and knowing the difficulty and the time and the incredible odds you face to get to that level and still win is just, it's a phenomenal thing. I mean, you're literally competing against the entire state in a form. And these are the best of the best, and it happens once in a lifetime that it comes along, and it seems to happen more to Chowchilla than any other school I've ever heard of. It just, we have some great young men and great young women, and there's something in the water there that breeds champions, and we're just very happy that they brought home this championship, CIF Division Valley Championship game, which was held on Saturday, May 18th, 2019, and the final score was Chowchilla Tribe 4, Monarchs 1.
Menachie.
What is it?
Menachie. They're out of
Menachie?
Menachie, yeah.
Didn't even know that. Anyway, I've got certificates for all of you, and I'd like for the board to come out front, and we'll issue these and shake hands with these champions.
Give big thanks to the teachers and coaches too, so.
Always involved in the process are great coaches and teachers who strengthen the character of these young men and young women, and we're very proud to introduce them today. And we have several things for them, but we'll call them up one at a time. First, we have the coach, Jeff Palmer, and very happy to introduce him. Start here to me. Appreciate this guy. Also, one of our police officers in Chowchilla. We're proud of him, Lieutenant Palmer. And let's see. I'm going to call them off of the certificate themselves. So, Christian Buss, you're not here. We'll set that aside for him, Coach. Oh, okay. Clay Crutchett. Clay, congratulations. I've known your family a long time. It's good to have you here today. Proud of you. Ronan Haley? Not here? Austin Hickman? A lot of seniors. Brenton Holtz? Also, I've known your family a long time. All these boys, their names are all They're a lot bigger than I remember them. Noah Linares. Congratulations, young man. Aiden Munoz. Great job. Congratulations, Aiden. Austin Ortiz. Nate Ramos. Another senior. Wesley Roberts. Hunter Stonier. Did I pronounce it correct? Yeah. Very good. Anthony Woolsey. Congratulations, Anthony. Look at the size of these young men. Feeding them good. Cody Woolsey. Okay, let's see. Tristan Holt. Congratulations, Tristan.
Congratulations.
Is John one of your?
I'm guessing they're not here.
Yeah. Just get right down here back to this. Assistant coaches.
Who's the coach for the Lions?
How do I get into this picture with these tall boys, man? I gotta get over here. I'm the little guy for these guys.
You guys have your stations prepared?
If you don't mind, yeah.
Yeah, first on behalf of the school, the players, the coaches, I want thank you, supervisors, all of you guys for what you do and the dedication you guys have to our county. But thank you for recognizing these young men today. All of my seniors are not here, but I have a bright future right here. You can see the size of these young men, and these are our future leaders, and these are wonderful young men to be around. Each and every one of them have worked hard this year. And the results are right here for them. And I've told them before that this is, they'll never forget this year. They'll never forget each other. This like it was mentioned, could be once in a lifetime opportunity. We hope it's 2 in a row, but that's tough to do.
Gotta have 2 of those rings.
Yeah. But again, thank you guys very much for what you do in your time.
They're giant. We got 4 of them in our city.
Good job. Now you gotta go back to school.
Yeah, I'll take them to lunch.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Proud of you guys. Way to go. Exciting.
Steal my glasses?
Oh,
How come they got there?
I don't know.
David, come on, sit them, tie your sunglasses.
What an exciting thing.
It is,
Win that
really nice.
championship. That's really neat.
The light was working, yeah. All right, so now it is 10:31, look at that,
Right on
right
the
on the
money,
dot, perfect
man.
timing. 6A, public hearing.
6A, Board of Directors, Special Districts, Assessment District 89-1, Bass Lake, Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operation Division. Hearing to consider adoption of a resolution approving the estimate of expenditures and making a determination to levy and collect a special assessment for road maintenance purposes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Adel Kayat, Public Works Director. For your consideration today is the continuation of the annual assessment and work program established for Assessment District 89-1, the Pines Tract at Bass Lake. This district pays an assessment of $100 per parcel a year to provide and the maintenance of the roads and easements. And as an assessment district, the governing body must hold a public hearing each year to continue this assessment. With the $100 annual assessment, the district generates $56,200 per year for maintenance purposes. So the Pines Tract Homeowners Association, acting as an advisory committee, wishes to continue working with the county and recommends approval of this action. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yeah, I just got one. Is this item budgeted? You put no, will this item require additional personnel? It says yes. How come? It's never changed from year to year. I don't. You need more personnel to do this?
Supervisor Wheeler, I would recommend that, this was probably a typo. Yes, sir. So thank you for bringing this to light. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, this is just continuing doing what we're doing with
I
our
figured
current
that. That's
staff.
the reason I brought it up. I said
Thank you.
yes, so. Thank you, that's all. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. This is a notice public hearing. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call it close to the public hearing, bring it back to the board for action.
I move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Before that, I'm going to strike that personnel deal and make that a no when it's
Make the
passed.
correction.
Yes.
Is that good? Okay to the second?
Okay, call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Item 7B.
7B, Community and Economic Development Department, Environmental Health Division. Discussion and consideration of approval for additional compensation in the amount of 5% per month for Senior Environmental Health Specialist Monica Roth pursuant to Madera County Code, Section 2.60.310, for the performance of additional duties managing environmental health's website and GIS work effective June 1, 2019 to June 30, 2020.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Dexter Marr, Environmental Health. Yeah, this item before you is, there's a few things that Environmental Health would like to do. And one of the big items is that in collaboration with IT, we would like to start posting food inspection reports online. And one thing, Senior Monica Roth has an IT background, and she is the best fit in our department to help with that process. And I'm available for any questions.
Any question? Oh, is this from the last one?
No, It's a good idea.
All right. Any public comment? Call close to public comment, bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Yes. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. I also want to just thank admin, HR, IT, and the board for your support. Thank you.
Nothing brings the community together like food permit, or food safety permits. Thanks, Dexter. All right. 7C.
7C, Office of Information Technology Fire Suppression. 1, discussion and consideration of entering into an agreement with Johnson Controls Fire Protection in the amount of $83,000 plus any applicable tax for the purchase and installation of dry fire suppression systems for the data centers located at the juvenile detention facilities and the Department of Corrections for fiscal year 2018-19, and authorize the chairman to sign. 2, discussion and consideration of approval of transfer of appropriations number 18-155 in the amount of $90,000.
Good morning. Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer, and with me today is Brian Rohde, Deputy Chief Information Officer over our network and security. So as you well know, there are many items that we bring before your board that we go ahead and we place on consent calendar. And this one is slightly different. In addition to wanting to entertain everybody with a waterless fire suppression system, we wanted to also point out that a lot of the things that we bring forward are regulations, and they're mandated. And so we have rationale for bringing those forward, and they are within regulations. In this case, the regulations are being met because it's my understanding that the building regulation requires that there is a fire suppression unit in the data center rooms. What we are proposing, what our recommendation is to put a waterless fire suppression system located at the Department of Justice or Department of Corrections and the Juvenile Detention Center. The rationale is because as we have a greater reliance on computers and technology, and because of the great amount of equipment, electrical equipment and heat generated equipment that goes into the data centers, the risk of fire is present. Brian, Mr. Rohde is going to go over some of the a risk management matrix, a risk assessment matrix that we completed to explain why we are making this recommendation. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Rohde.
Good morning, Mr. Supervisors. Brian Rohde, Deputy Chief Information Officer. So I'd like to just further explain how we came to the recommendation of the investment in the dry fire suppression system. Ultimately, the Road 28 campus, or the Juvenile Hall Detention Facility, it is the main entry point for all data at the Road 28 campus. So if we lose network connectivity or there is a fire or an emergency in that facility, the entire campus will go down. Just a snapshot of who that will impact, that is Juvenile Hall, the old juvenile boot camp, health. Today, it would be the health department until they move, and the Department of Corrections. In addition, we're recommending another investment for an additional dry fire suppression in the Department of Corrections. And the impact in that facility is ultimately their security cameras, their commissary equipment, their jail intake and counting systems. Their entire facility could be negatively impacted if there was a fire in that room. As you can see on the board, what we're looking for risk to exist is essentially all items, those items being threat, vulnerability, likelihood, and impact to exist. In this particular instance, they all do exist. As we know, fire is not likely. However, if fire does take place, the impact is high. Therefore, we mark this as a medium impact, and this is why we're bringing it to your board for consideration, is because ultimately we do believe that a dry system is worth the investment. However, we noticed that there is potentially some gray area in this recommendation. So I'm available for any further questions.
I'd like to add that we did work with building maintenance and general services. They were able to obtain the quotes for us and to get that off of a pre-bid contract. The expected life of the waterless fire suppression unit is 12 years, and that is actually the gas within, or the gas within the tank, the chemical within the tank is could never expire, but the tank has to go through a checkpoint every 12 years. So we're good for 12 years. However, if there's a problem with the tank after the first 12 years, it could theoretically have to be replaced. So when we looked at the math on it, we're looking at probably about $3,500 per facility per year for that 12 years.
Just to maintain
Pretty
and make sure
cheap.
that Supervisor Wheeler?
Yeah, thank you. That's pretty cheap, really. If Dave and Max remember when the state was trying to make us put sprinklers in homes, which they did, 2 or 3 insurance companies came here and testified that they have more damage from the sprinklers going off than they did saving homes of fire.
Right.
So, and I can see where this would work. Leslie, my fiance up there, had one that froze last year, and it ruined everything. I mean, when it thawed out, water went everywhere. So this is such a great idea. So thank you guys for thinking ahead, like we always try to do in Madera County. So
The contract is already set, because I see the contractors in the audience, and the supervisor just said it's cheap. I don't want it to go up, right?
who's the contractor?
Huh? Right, he's right there. I'm just saying, we're not going to have it go up.
okay.
I
but-
don't-
Yeah. All right, is there any other comments or questions? Any public comment? See none, call close to public comment, bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Supervisor Poitras. Gotcha.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you.
May I add just one more? It's not necessarily has anything to do with the vote, but I did want to say that this next year we are going through a business impact analysis to see different areas where we may have risk. I don't want, we are going to, this one is different because it's a 24-hour facility. It's the hop-off point for Road 28. So we have to take these all by a case-by-case basis and see where the risk really is and whether or not what that impact's going to be. So we'll continue to do this risk assessment as we go through.
How about our
business impact.
room upstairs, where all the stuff's in?
So
That
this
might be
entire
another
facility
place to
has
look.
dry systems, and we try to outfit all of our new builds with dry systems as well.
So it is a dry?
It is a dry system
Oh.
in this facility,
step
along with
ahead of
the
us.
new sheriff's office. We have quite a few, and those that aren't child support, thank you, and those that are not, we're identifying them and going to bring them back to look for approval.
Great,
Case by
thank you.
case.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
team.
7D.
7D, Public Works Department Administration Division. Discussion and consideration of entering into an agreement with Tyler Technologies for an initial one-time fee of $38,300 and an annual fee of $26,549 for utility billing software for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and authorize the chairman to sign.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrea Saldati, Deputy Director with Public Works. The item before you is a contract with Tyler Technologies to purchase their software called Encode 10. It is a utility billing software. We currently do not have a true utility billing software. What we currently use is a module of our cost accounting software, which is called CAMS. I don't even know how long we've been using it. I can tell you we've got information in there from 2007. It does not do what we need it to do. There is no automation to that system at all. There is a lot of manual entry and a lot of manipulation of that system. We are not able to produce reports that are clear and concise for our customers. Encode 10 is a true utility billing software. It will be able to automate tons of our noticing that we need to do. It can do automatic phone calls, text messages. We can do online payments. It is essentially what you think of as utility billing software. That's what we are purchasing. Currently, we pay roughly $6,000 for a maintenance agreement with CAMS. The maintenance agreement that we will be paying is a lot more, $26,000. But again, we've had that software for over a decade. It has outlived its life. And for efficiency purposes, we're going to reduce a lot of man hours with this new software. And it's going to ease the use for our residents.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yeah, you've run this through IT, right?
Yes, we have ran it through IT, and we will have a kickoff meeting in coordination with IT. Everybody's been on board. They've reviewed the contract. We made sure it was okay.
Good, because about 10 years ago, we had a problem with everybody doing their own IT work in each department. And everybody had different things. Nobody were compatible. So I used to ask that all the time, but I just thought I'd throw it in this time. So I knew you probably had. So it's a great idea. So it's anything we can do to make it easier for everybody is greater. So
Any other questions or comments? Any public comment? See none, I'll call close to the public comment portion, bring it to the board for action.
move to approve.
Awesome. We have a motion and a second by Supervisor Rodriguez.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez? Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Good job.
And 7E.
7E, Board of Directors, Groundwater Sustainability Agency for the Madera Chowchilla Delta Mendota Subbasin Water and Natural Resources Department. Discussion and update on activities for the Madera, Chowchilla, and Delta Mendota subbasins.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an informational presentation. There's no need to take any action, but I wanted to bring you up to date on the activities within the subbasins. So we'll go over 4 types of information. I'll give you a status update on each of the GSPs. I'll talk through the sustainability goals for the Madera and Chowchilla subbasins. We'll talk about monitoring networks, and then we'll talk minimum thresholds, measurable objectives, and interim milestones. So in terms of the status of the GSPs, we have released chapters 1 and 2 of the Madera Joint GSP. Those are available for public comment. This is our informal comment period. We'll go into formal comment period for 90 days starting August 1. The Chowchilla and the Delta Mendota GSP that the exchange contractors are the lead agency for, those also have similar dates in late July and early August when they'll be available. I wanted to bring you up to speed on the advisory committee. This is our diverse group of different types of ag, disadvantaged communities, and residents who are talking through SGMA-related issues. We met twice in May. We were discussing allocations in terms of ag water and came up with some alternatives as well. So I'll just put this out. You will hear a fair amount of discussion about allocations, and that's the typical and traditional way of managing groundwater when you have to manage it, is to go to some sort of allocation system. We have had folks advocating for some alternatives, which include assessing fees and putting the money aside to buy land and retire it. That suggestion came from the ag community, so I just want to put that out there so you are aware that is actually being discussed. We'll meet again June 20th at 2 o'clock. That's a special meeting, and we'll take up allocations again. So now I'd like to walk through sustainability goals. This is a required element in the GSP. So I'm going to talk through Madera and Chowchilla. These goals will be very, very similar because we have the same strategy for each. So you need 3 parts. You need a description of the goal, a discussion of the measures, and an explanation of how you're achieving the goal. But basically, we're implementing a package of projects and management actions to balance groundwater systems in terms of inflows and outflows. We would like to incorporate large-scale recharge projects and taking as much surface water as we can from the agencies that have access to surface water. And that includes us with the 215 water. And we're going to then be sustainable in 20 years and decrease our groundwater extraction. And part of that is the 2 to 3% decrease over time for the county GSAs in the Madera and Chowchilla subbasin. So that's proposed sustainability goals for those 2 subbasins. I'm going to show you now monitoring networks. So Pete Leffler, who's a hydrologist for Ludorf and Scalmanini, has been evaluating wells that we can use for a monitoring network. We're starting with the CASGEM wells. Those are the much more official wells where the data is kept by the Department of Water Resources. So we start with CASGEM wells, then we look at the water history, how many years the wells have been used for monitoring, and then we're looking at whether construction data is available. This will tell us at what level the well is extracting water. So there are data gaps, and you can see one, Mr. Chairman, in the ranchos there, which is to say we have not found good wells there to use for monitoring wells. So that's something that the GSA could then drill. We do have a grant for installing monitoring wells, but it needs to be in disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities.
Is it because people don't want to let you monitor it, or are we monitoring our, like the MD10A wells and the CSA 19?
I think it's a combination of not having a lot of water history and not having construction data. And the construction data happens more with domestic wells. Mm-hmm. But we will look and see if we can fill that data gap, but I just wanted to point that out because I think it's pretty obvious looking at the map where the gap is, and that's an important area in terms of monitoring domestic well levels. So in Chowchilla, we have sort of similar discussions in terms of wells going on, and the one we're having currently is with Clayton Water District, which is in the county-wide area, but it's its own water district, and they may want to suggest some alternative wells there. But same criteria, we're trying to get CASGEM wells, we're trying to get wells with water history and construction information available. Okay, so let's talk about the undesirable results. So there's 6 sustainability indicators, and we've talked through these before. Lowering of the groundwater levels, reduction in groundwater storage, seawater intrusion, which is fortunately not an issue, water quality degradation, land subsidence, and surface water depletion. So I'm going to walk you through how we're proposing assessing minimum thresholds. Now, that's a value that represents groundwater levels, which when you exceed them will cause an undesirable result. So here's the definition of undesirable results. We have to define these for each of the 6 things I showed you. And what we're proposing is that if you exceed the minimum threshold 2 falls, 2 autumns, if you fall below it and 30% of the wells fall below it, then you would have exceeded the minimum threshold. So this seems typical. We're seeing different percents throughout the San Joaquin Valley, anywhere between 20 and 40%, so we're sort of in between.
Are these state minimums on here?
Are they state minimums?
State guidelines, yeah.
So we're using the state law in order to come up with the undesirable
okay.
result, but they basically let the GSA choose these things
Okay.
within limits, and I get to that in the next slide. So in terms of setting the minimum thresholds, there are existing beneficial uses, and these are things that are defined in state law. Obviously, drinking water has the highest priority. This is how we survive, but irrigation, both irrigation for ag and for landscape, is considered a beneficial use, and of course, there's environmental beneficial uses under the law as well. In California, we have a human right to water law, and we also understand that agriculture is of critical importance to the county economy. So we're attempting to balance all of those in setting these minimum thresholds. So we also understand that GSAs need time to transition. We can't go immediately to sustainability without substantial economic consequences in 2020. So I'll also speak to potential mitigation and what that might look like. So let me walk you through something. So here is our methodology. We are going to look at some hydrographs that show history as well as future conditions. You'll see an average hydrology used for 2020 to 2040 that removes extremes, and then we took the historic hydrology of 1965 to 2015 and imposed it on 2040 to 2090. So let me walk you through this. So step 1, this is plotting data. The blue dots are all real data points, and the lines that go up and down are model results. So the first thing you should notice is that the data points and the blue data points and the lines are actually pretty well correlated. This means the model is actually showing us what went on historically. It's modeling the same way history presented itself, which is a good thing. So blue is historical results, and then red is modeled future results. And time is on the horizontal axis going back to 1980. And then on the vertical axis, we're showing groundwater elevation. And this is something hydrologists use, not so much people in the real world. This is not well depth, it's elevation in terms of sea level. But what we need to notice is the trend over time. So you can see declining well levels until now. So step 2 is we put the 2 critical time periods on. The implementation phase is the 2020 to 2040, and then we look 50 years afterwards, which is the sustainability phase. And step 3, we took a drought period, which was about 6 years, and we extended it another 4 years. That's that red line going down. So we've created this artificial drought to really stress the system. You can imagine a 10-year drought in Madera would be pretty harsh. There would be a lot of undesirable results. So we're stressing the system there. Step 4 is then we're drawing the minimum threshold, the MT, at the bottom of the stressed system. So that's the low point. And then what we're doing is we're making sure that those Dips are still above the initial minimum threshold, and that's what the arrows on the top are pointing you towards. So let me show you a couple options that might happen. So in step 6, we're then looking at well depths of domestic wells. So look at the well depth line here on the slide. You can see it's substantially below the minimum threshold. So this suggests that we would not need to mitigate, that probably we would not run into dry wells. But that's an average well depth, right? And well depths are all over the place. So you might still have some wells that would go dry. In scenario 2, you can see that the well depth is very, very close to the initial minimum threshold. So that suggests to me that we would probably need to mitigate. And I'll talk through what that looks like in a sec. If subsidence is a concern, we can draw the minimum threshold upward. So here's what we're thinking about in terms of mitigation. There's a substantial amount of energy from the state of California towards safe drinking water for people. So there should be grant funds becoming available. There's currently 2 bills and 1 budget act that are being considered by the state legislature that would free up money for safe drinking water. So what we're considering is some sort of program that people sign up for and that has loans or grants available that allows them to either replace their well entirely, deepen their well, or connect to a community water system. So it would just depend on what they're closest to and whether or not there's water available. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple more. I know this is the lengthiest presentation that I've done, but it is of critical importance to.
Very important.
We're getting real data, not just what people say. I think it's very important to
Very
trying to get
important.
there.
And there's a lot of what people say around there.
Yeah.
This needs to be online like this so that people can see what we're facing.
Yes. Yes. So, and we do put ours online, and I'll make sure that Clerk of the Board has it as well. Okay, so now we're going to look at setting minimum thresholds for reduction in groundwater storage. So we're proposing that the minimum threshold is no long-term reduction in storage, but that's during the sustainability period. So that's the 50-year period. We will reduce groundwater storage during the implementation period. So I just need to put that out there. There's no way to transition the economy immediately towards sustainability. So in terms of setting thresholds for land subsidence, we're going to implement groundwater level minimum thresholds and then evaluate based on all of the subsidence surveys going on. So there is a ton of work in subsidence. The state has multiple branches that measure for subsidence, and JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, does as well. So we're going to check our subsidence against data that's out there. In terms of water quality, we would like to use the federal and state guidelines that are available for maximum contaminant levels. These are levels that are already in place. We don't need to create an additional benchmark, and they've already been set by the federal and then state. So I'll walk you through a little bit for arsenic. So you can see that line on the graph for the depth to reduced sediments, reduced in terms of reduction, the chemical process as opposed to oxidation. So these are black, blue, and green sediments that have higher concentrations of natural constituents in them. So you want to keep the water level away from the reduced sediments so that you don't free up arsenic. So you can see that we've graphed where the reduced sediments are, and then we're keeping the minimum threshold above there. In terms of nitrates and total dissolved solids, there's a couple groups that work on this already, including CV salts. So what we'd like to do is use thresholds and levels that they've set in their plans. So again, we're not recreating an additional set of requirements for using what's out there. We do need to talk about surface water depletion a bit. So as you may expect, the groundwater levels within the subbasin are way below surface water. So we're not seeing surface water depleted by extracting groundwater. So we don't think that we need to set a minimum threshold for surface water depletion. And then lastly, we have to look at GDEs, the groundwater dependent ecosystems, and these are essentially plants that rely on groundwater in order to grow. We do not think we have significant amounts of these, but there is a subconsultant to David's Engineering called Stillwater Sciences, and this is what they do. They look for groundwater dependent ecosystems. So they found some small areas in the Madera subbasin. And so we will be aware of that in setting minimum thresholds. So that concludes the minimum thresholds portion. I have a couple more slides on measurable objectives.
Do those groundwater-dependent ecosystems include human beings?
No, Mr. Chairman, they're plants. But thank you for asking. So I'm picking up a couple more slides from David's Engineering. So we just talked about minimum thresholds, which is this low level that you don't want to go below, or at least you don't want 30% of your data points to be below there. We now have measurable objectives, and this is more where you want to operate the groundwater basin. And this is something that should have some operational flexibility. In many cases, we're choosing averages. So I'll show you on a slide what that looks like. But for groundwater levels, we're using an average of the modeled monthly groundwater levels from 2040 to 2090. For storage, we're using the groundwater level measurable objectives to calculate storage volume, which is what the Department of Water Resources wants. For land subsidence, we're using groundwater level. And for water quality, we will use current constituent concentrations. For surface water depletion, we think this is still not required. So here's how that ends up looking. So whereas the minimum threshold was this low line, the measurable objective, which is where you want to operate your system, is kind of an average line in the middle. And then one more topic. We have these interim milestones, which are check-in points, roughly every 5 years. So we have groundwater levels modeled during the implementation, and I'll show you that on the next slide. For storage, we're using groundwater levels there to calculate the volume. For land subsidence, we're doing the same thing we did with measurable objectives, and for groundwater quality, using current constituent concentrations. So this is how it all looks together. Oh, whoops, one slide early. Those are the interim milestones there. They're in the pink boxes, pink or purple. So those are the check-in points. And there's the minimum threshold and the measurable objective. So that is what we have a consultant to help us wrestle with, and what we've been doing in technical ad hocs for the past couple of months. But I wanted to put that out and see if there was any feedback.
So I think it's great in having the models to look at and see. I guess I want to know, like, does the model take into account people that aren't following the rules? You know, like some outliers of people that continue to extract too much, not put it into the ground. What all does the model take? What are the remedies that went into the model to get to that measurable approach? How does it see the interface between our disadvantaged communities that maybe can't put in that infrastructure, or that ag interface with them? There's a lot of questions, but kind of what does the model take into account to be able to give those data points?
So good questions. The model isn't working at a GSA level. It's working at kind of a sub-basin, and actually Madera and Chowchilla sub-basins together. Mm-hmm. We think that for the county GSAs, the decrease in consumption of 2 to 3% a year is enough to allow some flexibility. But in terms of like people not following the rules, that's something we will need to deal with as a county GSA. And that's of critical importance, right? People need to know that we're going to hold them accountable and that the rules are enforceable. And so it's not optional. We saw that in the last drought where we went to optional conservation and we saw no conservation. Yeah. So we have to have something that is mandatory and that can hold people accountable.
Enforceable.
Enforceable, yes.
Some areas used more water during that conservation because there was nothing coming. So, and then when we look at 2 to 3% decrease per year, are we taking, is that off of what is standard for that crop? Is it, do different crops have to take different amounts off? Is it 2% or 3% less than what they were using, and maybe they were using too much to begin with?
So it's not that granular, but that's what we're discussing at the advisory committee. Do we ask everybody to go to 2% and it's just across crops? Or is it more in some crops or less in others? And where do you start them? And one of the things we saw in Fox Canyon when we went down there to look at their groundwater market is they allocated too much water to everybody. Well, then there was no need for a water market. They had as much water as they needed. They couldn't trade. So it's a critical component, and the advisory committee doesn't have a recommendation yet.
Okay. Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, go back to that last slide, that minimum deal you had. Can you do that?
He said please, you just didn't hear it. It's back up, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading something. The interim milestones, that's a 20-year period. And I see, like right now where we are, we're up a little bit now. It's going to go down. Are you kind of predicting like a drought, or is it just average rainfall predicament, or guesstimate, or?
So between 2020 and 2040, we used kind of average hydrology. So there will be droughts, we know, during that time period.
We will have that.
And we'll probably have wet periods too, but you're looking at something that took out some of the extremes.
Yeah, so you got the drought here in the 2010 arrows there where the blue arrows are. So you're thinking that we might have a worse drought, or is it that just that we're going to be draining the groundwater that much lower between now and then?
Yeah, I think that's actually the latter point is the takeaway. The way it currently stands, we are modeling extracting more groundwater over the next 20 years to transition the economy.
Yeah. Remember one of our meetings that we had at RWMG that one of the gentlemen suggested that each ranch figure out when we get these numbers and stuff, how much to say follow, in their tree. If they got 40 acres, take 5 acres out, or 10 acres. Has that been brought up at all while you're doing these discussions?
Yes, it's actually come up in the last maybe 10 days from a couple of different farmers. So,
Right.
I mean, what they are.
They suggested that I think that we ought to really carry that,
Yeah.
because I think it's really important.
And I think that's the point of the advisory committee, is to reach out to diverse groups and to get input so that we don't need to work in a vacuum. So
Right.
they're
Exactly.
essentially saying, figure out a way of assessing, building a pool of money, and then pay people not to farm. And they're pointing to examples from, I think, prunes and raisins, where there was a glut and they needed to literally pay people not to farm whatever the crop was.
Right. And then the last thing is that I got MID's water bank. Is that up in any of these discussions, or I haven't heard nothing on it in the last 3 or 4 years.
You're talking about the,
The 12,000 acres we
Yeah.
have out here, the water bank.
That's kind of, I don't know the total details on it, but that's a bust.
Have you heard anything about it?
I also do not know the total details, but it's not moving ahead, and they're essentially, MID is using that land for recharge to do on their own for their own GSA.
Just for their own GSA? And we have no part of that one, right?
Nope, we have no part.
Okay.
As you assume after where it starts to go back up, that's with all of our infrastructure investments in place to recharge for conveyance, is that?
That's right. That's showing all projects in place, as well as management actions that have decreased consumption.
Okay, and then, so during this time, I know one of the things is, if we're not getting into sustainability, that there's, the state has the ability to come in and adjudicate the basin. Is taking it down on the glide path, have we talked with the state to make sure that a glide path is acceptable to them, so that, in year 5, when we're now down 15%, 10 to 15%, is that enough for them to not come in and say, no, you guys aren't getting there fast enough?
Thank you. So we did meet with the Department of Water Resources in their Fresno office and run the glide path scenario as well as some tentative minimum thresholds, measurable objectives past them to make sure they were okay with this. What they said is that many of the San Joaquin Valley counties are having to do some form of a glide path. And so I think that is okay. What's not okay is we're not going to do anything for 5 years, right? We need to show very clear progress right away. And they will step in sooner than 5 years if they feel that you're not on the right
Somebody's
path.
not doing
Yeah,
it.
and I think that if we took that approach of wait for 5 years, it's at this fever pitch right now where people are understanding there's going to be something's going to happen very soon. If we don't take that right now, then
Waiting 5 years
then it
is not
never
our
happens,
bag.
which is, yeah.
Right. We want to be right now on it, so. Thank you for a great job. This is so important. It's so nice to have these kind of things happening in
Yeah.
Madera County that we've been preaching for years.
All right. Any other questions of Stephanie? Seeing none, this isn't a public hearing, but any public comment regarding this item? Please.
Good morning, Madeline Harris from Leadership Council. So thank you, Stephanie, for that presentation, and I want to thank you all for your leadership as the GSA on this. I know that implementing Sigma is a very difficult task, and so I just want to acknowledge gratitude for that leadership. There are a few concerns as an organization that works alongside disadvantaged communities in the Central Valley and Eastern Coachella Valley that I wanted to bring up based on our work with residents in Madera County. And specifically, it would be with regards to establishing a minimum threshold, trying to prioritize drinking water and the human right to water and setting those minimum thresholds and not just depending on mitigation in terms of assuring that private well users' wells don't go dry during the implementation phase in. So I think that that's a main concern that residents in areas that rely on either small community water systems or domestic wells have continued to bring up with us. And it's something that I see as important in that phase-in process. And, we also have concerns about depending on, funding like the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund for mitigation and depending on an opt-in process, because the concern would be that if for any reason we're not able to pass the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, that then there isn't a pool of money that folks can use if their wells do go dry, or if it's an opt-in process and communities don't opt in on time, that then people are sort of out of luck if worst comes to worst. So preventing that from happening on the front end is sort of what communities have been asking for as we've worked with them. And then the other concern I wanted to bring up is in terms of groundwater quality minimum thresholds, expanding the scope beyond just contaminants like arsenic and nitrates, which are super important to take into account and do occur frequently. But, we've seen through the 244 analysis in Madera County in the past that some special districts and unincorporated communities have faced contaminants like uranium, iron, manganese, and bacterial contamination, among others. So trying to expand the scope of the groundwater contaminants that we're taking into account and establishing those minimum thresholds as well. So those were the things I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Madeline. Is there any other?
Hey, ma'am, where you say you're from?
From Leadership Council for Justice and
The what?
Accountability.
Everybody's talking.
Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability.
Have you been going to the meetings?
Tom, I gotta close public comment, and then if you have questions, you can bring her back up when we're back into our side.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? See none, I'm sure you may need to hang up here. I think there's a couple questions, but I'll call close to public comment, bring it back to the board. Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, I wanted to ask her actually a couple of things. One, on the contaminants, that is part of our analysis for the minimum thresholds. And most of those occur at a level below where domestic wells are established at this point, even generally, I believe it was at the 600-foot level, is that right? Yeah, with arsenic and various other things. So it is a concern, and those thresholds will probably be well above that. If they're not, we're in trouble anyway. It's a really bad thought to go that low for. But you mentioned insuring private wells. Do you have any suggestions on that? Because I don't believe at this point, given the government side of things, we cannot use government funds, public funds, to help people with private wells. It's a gift of public funds, so there's no mechanism to actually follow through with, you said insuring private wells. At one point, we lost about, I believe it was 1,000 wells or more in Madera County, in the Fairmead and the Ranchos area, and a lot of those people were served through the state came in and offered tanks in temporary circumstances to mitigate their situation during that time. But there was never any actual dollar help, except maybe through self-help enterprises where qualifying incomes were brought into play on that end. So I don't know what you're referring to on that.
So I don't mean insuring in terms of insurance policy. I guess I mean assuring that domestic wells don't go dry because the minimum threshold is so low that it would account for that happening as we phase in.
If the minimum threshold during the time is set past where they could get safe drinking water and they go dry, how do you assure that yet?
Right, so there's
Right, I
two
get you. I
components.
get what
One
you're
would
saying.
be preventing that from happening in the first place. The
Right,
other
right.
would be setting up an inclusive and accessible mitigation process that folks would be able to access if, God forbid, that were to happen.
Yeah, that's the dollar part of that is where I would have a little difficulty because of the gift of public funds. You just can't use those funds for private wells. But I do agree with
the
you.
safe and affordable drinking water fund
But I do agree. I do agree about the setting the thresholds.
And if that fund passes, that creates that nexus that voters say that there is
Right. It would have
that
to be.
access, there is a pot of money that will be dedicated to be able to
Right.
mitigate that. So,
Right. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Tom, did you have any further questions?
No, I just wondered who she's from, see, that's all. I didn't hear that you went, you talk a little fast and you die off, and I'm deaf in this ear and can't hear out of this one.
That's why we put him so close to the lectern.
I'll try to speak up in the future.
Slow down just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Good points.
Thank you for your points.
All right, any other questions of Stephanie or Madeline? Well, this is informational. Thank you very much for bringing it forward. As always, easy to understand and as easy as water can be. Thank you.
Right.
All right, with that, let's do pending legislation, supervisor and staff reports, and we still have a couple of items for a closed session. So any pending legislation?
I thought Mike was gonna get up and give us
Seeing
some.
none? All right, we'll move on from pending legislation, supervisor and staff reports. Supervisor Poitras?
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Yeah, at a town hall, and of course, between last meeting, I wanted to thank all the staff that showed up, my chief of staff. They're putting on a great meeting, had a lot of people, so it was a great deal. And then last week, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, I said on that board, we went to Tuolumne County and toured the rim fire, 257,000 acres. It's just amazing, that devastation there. And there's 20,000 acres in the middle of that Sierra Pacific owns. And you got to see how their place, how they've restored it, reforested it compared to what we're trying to do, the Forest Service. They're trying, they're doing a good job trying, and they got an $8.5 million HUD grant to help do it. And then Friday, the Air Board and 3 of us board members and 3 of the staff went up and met with Randy Moore in Vallejo at the he's the U.S. Forest Service District 5 region forester director, and talked about having more control burns up here, and how the Forest Service and Air Boards all up and down the state are working together to have more of them. So they're realizing, I think, that that's our next best bet to stop some of these wildfires. And then yesterday was the Governor Newsom's Emergency Management Preparedness Summit. Matt and Jamie and myself went to it, and Brittany was there also, my last chief of staff. And they're trying to, it's the first time anybody's kind of got out in the front of a fire season and seeing how we could do it. There's almost 500 people there from CAL FIRE, a lot of OES from the counties and stuff. I got to talk to Jay Varney, our OES director wasn't there, so I don't know what happened, but it was a great summit, so thank you.
All right. CEO? County Council?
No report, Chairman.
County Clerk?
No report, sir.
All right, and we will go back to closed session. Hope you get done by 12, Rob, so you can go to lunch.
Well, I've got an appointment at the
Okay, so
I
we'll,
said it
we'll,
because I looked at the agenda and I could tell we're going to be done.
yeah. Yeah. No, we went into closed session. I just got to get Regina to report out.
Pleasure. We're going to meet right after? Okay, that's good. Thanks, Letty, for the picture.
Tomorrow morning?
Thank you, Letty, for being here.
We're back. We're back now from closed session. County Council, anything to report?
No reportable action from closed session.
With that, I'll adjourn this meeting.